After the divorce, my outspoken mother dragged me back home. And right then, his old flame returned from overseas. That was when I finally faced reality. I left a divorce agreement and a medical report on the miscarriage for Chad. That night, my mom took the train all the way to the city and grabbed my hand. "Come on," she said firmly. "You're going home with me." Tears were just about to fall from my eyes when she snatched up my suitcase and marched straight toward the train station. "Count to 3, she snapped. "And swallow those tears." Chapter 1. I slipped off my wedding ring and pulled my suitcase out of the mansion I'd lived in for years. My mom urged me on from the side. "Stop dawdling. If we don't leave now, we'll miss the train back home. You still want to get there before dark or not?" I muttered under my breath. "It's already October. Even if we get to the station by 6, it'll still be dark." Mom shot me a glare so sharp I instantly shut my mouth. "Walk faster, and you'll make it home." Ever since I was little, I'd been terrified of my mom. She had a quick temper, and whenever I got cheeky, she'd twist my thigh till I cried. Storming ahead, she dragged my bags, big and small, charging straight into the train station like a whirlwind. And the moment the train began to move, I realized clearly, Chad and I were truly over. I was no longer the wife of the all-powerful Chad Sterling. "Mom," I asked quietly, "how did I live in the city for so many years and end up with nothing?" She pinched my arm hard. "My daughter graduated from a top university, works at a top law firm, and even married that big-shot CEO. You've done enough. You've broken even." She paused, then added matter-of-factly. "Just got a little unlucky, that's all." I hadn't slept well for weeks. Fighting with Chad had drained me completely, leaving nothing but heartbreak and exhaustion. But in my mom's eyes, it was just a bit of bad luck. I wanted to argue, to tell her how twisted and painful it all was. How complicated our marriage had been, how suffocating it felt to live in his world. But she didn't want to hear it. She covered my mouth with her hand and made the final call. "You're tired, that's all. Go home, rest, and everything will fall into place." The sadness I'd felt about leaving the city I'd lived in for 7 years faded. Not gone, but softened, by the sheer force of her certainty. Chapter 2. When the train rumbled to life, I suddenly realized how long it had been since I'd last taken one. Chad was the kind of man who used money to buy silence. Wherever he went, he needed the best. The quietest seat, the most secluded room, the calmest air. If it weren't so difficult to get domestic flight permits, he would have bought himself a private jet just to avoid people. Living in that kind of world beside him, I was always on edge. Every meeting with his business partners required endless preparation. What to say, how to act, what to wear. I suppose I've always been someone with a bit of an obsession for perfection. Someone who worries too much about whether she truly belongs. Chad had brought me into a world that was never meant for me. And I'd spent years clenching my teeth, trying desperately to keep up. The pressure had nearly crushed me. Now, for the first time in years, I was back on a regular train. A ticket my mom had bought in a rush, determined to drag me home. The girl sitting beside me was scrolling through her tablet. She glanced at me and asked, "Hey, are you Mrs. Sterling?" She must have seen too many celebrity gossip posts. Even the rarest photos, the ones labeled #Chad Sterling Love Story and #Back Together Again. She had managed to dig up, blurry though they were. I smiled faintly. Mrs. Sterling should be at his villa right now. Technically, Chad and I weren't officially divorced yet, the papers were still being processed. But soon enough, Mrs. Sterling would be Tiffany. The girl flushed and waved her hands. "Oh, right, sorry. You just look really elegant." The picture of Mrs. Sterling I saw online was super blurry. "I must have mistaken you." My mom, sitting across from us, raised her voice immediately. "She's my daughter, coming home with her head held high." And she's got nothing to do with that Chad fella anymore. The girl apologized over and over, then buried herself back in her tablet, scrolling through gossip news again. Photos of Tiffany filled every page. While the so-called Mrs. Sterling was reduced to a single, grainy image. Chapter 3. Ever since Tiffany returned from abroad, and Chad went to the airport to pick her up, entertainment headlines had been everywhere. Tiffany, the heiress of Whitmore Holdings, was a social media darling with a polished life and a loyal following. The princess has arrived, make way, everyone. Back in college, she and Chad had been the golden couple, envied by everyone, admired by all. Then came the crisis. When the Sterling Group was on the brink of collapse after Chad's father's sudden death, the boardroom turned into a battlefield, and Chad's rightful inheritance was about to be taken from him. At that moment, Tiffany, who was supposed to marry him, chose to leave. Chad fell into his darkest days. The man everyone once called a prodigy now faced rejection after rejection. And eventually, he ended up in the hospital. The law firm I worked for had already decided to side with Chad's uncle. But I still showed up at his hospital room, carrying a basket of fruit. He sat on the bed, face pale and weary. He looked at me quietly. "Anna, I'm finished. Your firm won't get any partnership with the Sterling Group through me." He was right, he'd lost nearly all his supporters inside the company. From a rational standpoint, I shouldn't have been there at all. But I frowned and said seriously, "Chad, you have to stand up again. The board needs someone decisive, as self-pity won't get you anywhere. Trust me. We can win back the Sterling Group. And when you do, you'll work with our firm again, right?" His voice trembled. Why would you choose me?" He had been trying to rally the old shareholders, only to meet rejection at every turn. And yet, I believed in him, without hesitation, without condition. I tilted my head, meeting his eyes. "I'm not helping you for free. You're going to marry me. And when the money comes in, I'll take the share that's rightfully mine. I can help you. I studied both law and finance, and our firm has deep ties with high-end clients. Pick me, and you won't lose. I want to take a chance on this too." The ambition burning in my eyes lit something inside him, something he thought he'd lost. Of course, I had my own reasons. I liked Chad, his sharp eyes, his confidence, the way he commanded a room. Even when he fell from grace, I couldn't stand to see him give up. I wanted to gamble on him, because even if I lost, at least I would have tried. I winked at him and repeated softly, "You won't lose." As if compelled by fate, he reached out his hand. From that day on, I stood by him through every battle. Fighting for his inheritance, helping him rebuild his network, handling ruthless partners one by one. Every day left me exhausted. As if I were working 3 full-time jobs at once. But Chad never wasted the chance. He had always been talented in business, he'd just been too young, too wounded, too lost. As time passed, he became the CEO everyone respected. When control of the Sterling Group finally settled in his hands, its market value soared even higher than before. Chad must have been moved. He set off fireworks for me and made a promise. "Anna, you never left me when I was down. Now that we've reached the top, we'll share the view together. We'll always be together." He leaned against my shoulder. And in that moment, I truly believed I had found love. Chapter 4. We had even planned to have a child, but with work being so busy, it never happened. Now, years later, Tiffany was coming back. It felt like fate was mocking me. At that very moment, I had just found out I was pregnant. I was thrilled, ready to share the news with Chad. But when I got home, I overheard him on a voice call with his old friend. After all these years, he said softly, "I still can't forget her." His friend teased, "What about your wife, then? You know polygamy's not allowed, right? Anna will always be Mrs. Sterling. That's my promise to her." His words hit me like a plunge into icy water. And in that moment, my illusion of love shattered completely. It had always been one-sided, mine alone. Soon, the media was flooded with stories about Chad and Tiffany. Tiffany appeared at the airport in a little black dress, elegant and radiant as ever. Chad was there waiting for her. The Sterling Group was worth far more than it had been in those old days. Naturally, Tiffany's gaze softened. There were flowers laid out at the terminal, and she shone brighter than all of them. They looked just as they had back then. As if I had never existed in between them. Their reunion dominated the internet. While Chad and I had never even held a wedding ceremony. Love and indifference are easy to tell apart. I had stood by him for years, helped him rise from the bottom. Yet I had never truly entered his heart. Tiffany's return reminded me of that every single day. Whenever she needed something, anything, Chad would go to her. I began to lose sleep, haunted by nightmares. My hair falling out from the stress. What finally broke me was the night I ended up in the hospital. Chad should have been there with me. But instead, he went to find Tiffany, drunk at a small bar. He didn't come home that night. I went to the hospital alone. Even the baby inside me seemed to feel my sadness. When my mom saw me scrolling through my phone, she covered the screen with her hand. "Stop looking," she said sharply. "You'll go blind staring at that nonsense." I put my phone down. My stomach growled. Without thinking, I said, "Mom, I'm craving something warm and homemade, like the food you used to make." I meant it. It had been so long since I'd had any. Chad always preferred Western food. Northern dishes never appeared in the meals of the mighty Mr. Sterling. Sterling. But my mom shut me down instantly. Where am I supposed to find anything fresh in this weather? It's not even pickled yet. Then she glared at me. "Anna, did marriage make you stupid? Or is it the pregnancy? When I was carrying you, I wasn't this troublesome. Maybe I really had gone stupid. For Chad, I'd given up my job. Stood by his side for years fighting his battles. And in the end, I was the one leaving the city in disgrace. This wasn't bad luck, as my mom said. This was just me being a fool. When you divorce him, you make sure you take your share of his assets, Mom lectured. I've told you, never take advantage, but never take a loss either. And crying for that useless man? Not worth a single tear. She kept muttering beside me. And the train was noisy as ever. But somehow, in that chaos, I fell asleep. Ever since hearing that Tiffany was coming back. It was the first time I had slept peacefully. Chapter 5. It had been a long time since I last came home. My mom had never really approved of my marriage to Chad. She refused to visit the city, and whenever I wanted to go see her, work always got in the way. The moment I stepped inside, she circled me, frowning. "Oh my God, look at you, you've lost so much weight." I gave an awkward laugh. "Not that much, right? This is just normal." In truth, I had been keeping my weight under strict control. I stuck to clean meals, barely any oil or fat, until I had almost no strength left in me. Maintaining the perfect image in public was part of being a CEO's wife. My mom clearly didn't agree. She grabbed her kitchen tools and disappeared into the kitchen. By the time she came out, the entire table was covered with food. A huge pot of crispy fried pork. A plate full of homemade ribs and green bean buns. The only vegetable dish on the table was a pile of potatoes. "Eat more." She kept piling food into my bowl until it looked like a small mountain. I could barely keep up. "Mom, enough, enough." But she wouldn't stop. "You're as skinny as a stick. Eat." "What, you don't like my cooking now?" I wasn't used to this kind of warmth anymore. In Chad's world, everyone ate in small bites, quietly and politely. My mom's enthusiasm was almost overwhelming. "Come on, eat up. When you're full, you'll have the strength to get through anything." So I gave in, and kept eating. After dinner, I helped her clean up. And the two of us sat on the couch, talking about nothing and everything. For the first time in years, I felt an unfamiliar peace. Everything from that other life, the mansion, the business world, felt like it belonged to someone else. That night, I dreamed of my mom again. She kept piling food into my bowl until I turned into a balloon. Round, floating up from my room, drifting farther and farther away from Earth. Below me, Chad was shouting. Anna. Anna, come back. I just laughed foolishly as I floated away. And then, on the other side, my mom grabbed the string of the balloon. She barely tugged, and I dropped right back down. You silly girl, where are you trying to run off to? I'll cook your favorite comfort food, all right? Don't worry, Mom will figure it out. Chapter 6. When Chad returned to the villa, Anna was already gone. The place felt hollow, silent, stripped of warmth. He had just finished helping Tiffany settle into her new apartment in the city. She had worn something light and revealing, asking him to stay the night. But he had refused, thinking of Anna waiting for him at home. Only now did it strike him, what was it that Anna wanted to talk to him about the last time she called? Something about not feeling well. And going to the hospital. A sharp pain throbbed in his temples, his chest tightening. Where's my wife? He asked. The butler looked surprised. Mrs. Sterling already left, sir. She left 2 documents for you. Chad opened the folder. One was a divorce agreement. Anna had double degrees in finance and law, every clause was written with precision and fairness. All she asked for was what rightfully belonged to her during their marriage. But she actually wants to divorce me? The words came out in a low growl, pressed through clenched teeth. He quickly opened the second document. It was a hospital report. Dated yesterday. Anna had undergone a miscarriage procedure. The world spun around him. When had she gotten pregnant? Yes, he remembered, he had mentioned wanting a child, and they hadn't used protection for months. But when nothing happened, he assumed it just wasn't meant to be. Did she go to the hospital that day to end the pregnancy? Or did she make that decision the moment she found out? Chad's mind went blank. His vision blurred. When did she leave? Where did she go? I'm going to find her right now. The butler hesitated. I'm not entirely sure, sir. I think Mrs. Sterling might have gone back to her hometown. Chad froze. He only knew she was from the north, but he had never been there with her, never even asked which town. Where exactly is her hometown? The butler stammered. I don't know either. Find out, Chad barked. Now. And once you do, book me the earliest flight there. Chapter 7. That day, I was scrolling on my phone when my mom, always sharp-eyed, came over. Something wrong? She asked, squinting at the screen before I could lock it. Her brows immediately furrowed. What kind of girl is this? No self-respect at all. Then, incredulously, heavens, what on earth is she doing? On my screen was a message from Tiffany, image. The photo showed Chad standing in front of a floor-to-ceiling window. And in the reflection, Tiffany, wrapped only in a towel, her body provocatively exposed. It was blatant provocation. I was already divorcing him, yet she still had to shove this in my face. Anger surged up my throat, so sharp it almost made me gag. I pulled Chad out of my blocked list, sent him a screenshot of the chat. And then promptly shoved him right back in. Next, I forwarded the photo to a journalist friend. Post this, I said. Chad and I aren't officially divorced yet, let's give the public a taste of his infidelity. If he ever tried to play the victim later or resist the divorce, public opinion would do the talking for me. Besides, Sterling Group was at the top of the market now. This kind of scandal wouldn't dent the stock price or my share of it. Still, it disgusted me to the core. When I get angry, I tend to bite my lower lip without realizing it. And my mom caught it instantly. It takes 2 to tango, I muttered. Mom nodded. Exactly. If he hadn't let her in, she could strip all she wants, it wouldn't matter. He's the one with no self-control. Her words were crude but not wrong. I almost laughed despite myself. Then she leaned closer and said, "Sweetheart, you've tried the CEO type. How about switching things up? The boy next door, 6'2", strong as an ox, looks like he could actually take care of a household. Solid guy." I nearly choked on my water. "Mom. I'm not even divorced yet." "Oh, please. I know the papers aren't final yet, but that doesn't mean you can't start meeting people." She glanced toward the window. "You think he'll come chasing after you? You know, like in those novels, the remorseful CEO begs his ex-wife back?" She picked up a broom. "If he dares show up, I'll sweep him right back out." I shook my head. "He won't." Chad was too proud, a man who'd never bow to anyone, not even for love. That was what made Tiffany's pull so fatal. She was something he once couldn't have. And now that their roles had reversed, he was addicted to the power shift. Ever since Tiffany returned, she had endless reasons to summon him away. And every time she did, I understood her message clearly. In Chad's heart, the scale would always tip in her favor. Chapter 8. My mom and I settled into our quiet life in our small northeastern city. Even after I blocked Chad, the calls from his butler never stopped. He'd ask about the tiniest things, how I cooked Chad's porridge, which doctor prescribed my medication. I'd already told him countless times, exasperated. "Uncle Wang, I've written all that down for you already. Even someone who quits a normal job doesn't keep working for their old boss, right?" He would apologize over the phone, and then call again the next day. "I'm really sorry, ma'am. It's just that every time we handle these things ourselves, sir isn't satisfied." Sometimes he'd even bring up trivial matters about Sterling Group. While sorting vegetables in the kitchen, my mom would grumble. "What are you now, the president of the country? You married him, not hired yourself out as his assistant." I could only smile awkwardly. I'd stopped answering the butler's calls. But there were still some business partners I couldn't completely ignore. "After all, these are multi-million-dollar projects," I told her. I knew most of the Sterling Group employees personally. And I'd been maintaining relationships with the clients and their wives for years. At one point, I'd even kept a spreadsheet just to manage all the contacts. Even though Chad and I weren't officially divorced yet, I was still cleaning up his messes. Then, with a sharp snap, my mom closed my laptop. "Your top priority," she said firmly, "is to eat well and take care of your body. Even if it was an early-term miscarriage, it still weakens you." She sighed. "And for what? Do you think that man will remember any of this? In the end, the only one who can truly treat you well is yourself." I quietly sent all the remaining documents to their company email. And blocked every number that had ever contacted me. Then my mom confiscated my laptop entirely. For the first time, the world fell completely silent. Only then did I realize my whole life had been orbiting around Chad. My mom muttered while wiping her hands. "You weren't even this busy back when you were studying, and you still got into a top university and passed the bar exam. Once you stop doing everything for them, they'll finally realize what they've lost." I gave a helpless smile. "Mom, he's still a CEO of a billion-dollar company." She snorted. "All I know is, without my daughter, he's nothing." Then, proudly, "My girl's the best there is. Just like when I was a child. Mom always said I was the best." And with those words, I worked my way into a top school. Fought for every success. And made it to where I am now. But I never told her how hard it had been. How exhausting, how lonely, being Chad's wife. Maybe all of us, once we leave our mothers, only ever share the good news, never the pain. Until the day we're covered in bruises and just want to go home to her again. Chapter 9. After Anna left, Chad's anger slowly subsided into something closer to calm. In his memory, he had always believed that Tiffany was the one he loved most. But when he saw her again, the spark that once made his heart race was gone. Instead, everything and everyone around him seemed to constantly remind him of Anna. The way she'd been woven into his life without him even realizing it. At a business meeting, one of his longtime partners frowned. "Where's your wife? The last case she handled for our company was brilliant. My wife still talks about her, and those cookies she baked. My daughter loves them." Chad felt a flicker of embarrassment. She went back to her hometown for a while. The partner nodded, relief flashing in his eyes. "Oh, good. As long as you're not divorced." A strange unease stirred in Chad. Were these people working with him because of his company's strength? Or because of Anna? Finally, he couldn't help but ask, "Why do you care so much about my wife?" The partner looked genuinely surprised. "Your wife put in a lot of effort for our collaboration. She even noticed my wife's depression and kept her company, took her shopping. Now they're best friends. Honestly, my wife values her more than me." He chuckled. "And honestly, whenever she's involved, everything just runs smoothly. Let's face it, anyone would want to work with someone like her." He said it casually, but every word hit Chad harder than he expected. Even his usually stern mother turned against him. "Have you lost your mind? Everyone's seen how much Anna has done for you all these years. And now you're tangled up with Tiffany? Just the thought of it makes me furious. If you don't go bring Anna back, don't bother coming home." When she heard about Anna's miscarriage, she nearly ended up in the hospital herself. Her hand trembled as she pointed at him, stammering you, again and again, too angry to finish a sentence. Back at the villa, Chad was met with silence. The house that once felt alive now echoed with emptiness. No matter how late he came home, Anna had always waited for him. She had truly tried to be a good wife. But he had failed her completely. The realization burned in his chest as he learned from the butler that Anna's hometown was a small rural village in the Northeast. He could hardly believe it. The elegant, refined Anna, living there? She had walked away from endless luxury and comfort. And gone back to the countryside? A heavy frustration pressed down on his chest. The next morning, his assistant handed him a ticket. For the first time in his life, Chad was about to step into a world he had never known. Chapter 10. When Tiffany noticed Chad's restless mood, it didn't take her long to find out the reason Anna had left. A secret thrill coursed through her. Finally, she thought, she could take Anna's place openly and officially. Without delay, she went to find Chad. When she heard he was flying out the next day, she rushed to stop him. "Do you really love her now? You promised to go to the concert with me tomorrow, why are you breaking your word?" Chad's voice was low and tired. "Tiffany, we're not kids anymore. What's the point of talking about love or not love? I've already given you everything you wanted. Everything except his heart that he couldn't give." When she first returned to the country, he'd indulged her out of nostalgia, out of pity, maybe. The first week she was back, she'd call him in the middle of the night drunk at some bar, or beg him to escort her to banquets, or show up crying, trembling, whispering, "Chad, I can't live without you." The first few times softened him. But after the third, fourth, fifth time, it only exhausted him. "We shouldn't have met again," he said quietly. "That was my mistake." To him, Tiffany was no longer the perfect girl she used to be, just a lost woman clinging to the past. Whitmore Holdings' overseas investments had collapsed. Beneath its polished image, the company was bleeding cash. Even so, Tiffany still obsessed over concerts, high-end parties, and her glamorous image, unaware her family was already trying to marry her off. The suitors were either unattractive or already married. None compared to Chad. And that was why she'd gone back to him, to reclaim the man she once lost. But Chad had only wanted to see her regret, to see her fall, to see her beg. Now, the one filled with regret was him. He sighed deeply. Since Anna left, work had become unbearable. Even this morning, he couldn't tie his tie properly before heading out. He'd wanted to watch Tiffany regret, but in the end, he was the one drowning in it. Tiffany pressed her palm into her chest, then wrapped her arms around him from behind. "Whatever Anna could do for you, I can do it too. Chad, please, give me another chance." But she couldn't. No one could be like Anna, who never complained, who faced everything with calm strength instead of tears. Chad closed his eyes and pulled away from her. He handed her his phone. "What's this, then?" he said coldly. On the screen was the photo she had sent to Anna, the one showing her in a towel, reflected beside him in the window. Tiffany froze. I didn't mean. Chad's patience snapped. He had never even slept with Tiffany. Every time she tried to seduce him, he'd think of Anna instead. And now she had sent that photo to Anna, twisting the knife. When he tried to message Anna, he realized she'd already blocked him. He tried again with different numbers, but she never answered. That was when it hit him, the full weight of his mistake. It was his own indulgence, his refusal to draw a line, that had destroyed his marriage. "Tiffany," he said at last, voice cold, "it's over between us. Don't contact me again. If you need help, talk to my assistant. As for Whitmore Holdings, it's a sinking ship, and you know it. I can't throw Sterling Group's money into that hole. I have shareholders to answer to. You need to grow up. Your family needs you, not you kneeling here, begging me." Tiffany grabbed at his sleeve, panic rising. No, you can't do this to me. You can't." But Chad didn't look back. He walked straight out, heading for the airport. He had made up his mind. He couldn't live without Anna. Tiffany collapsed to the floor, trembling. Why? She thought bitterly. Hadn't he said once that she was the one he loved most? Chapter 11. It was Chad's first time setting foot in this land. The cold wind cut across his face, sharp and unwelcoming, making him instinctively pull his coat tighter. His assistant had arranged a driver, and after half a day on the road, they finally reached the small village where Anna lived. Chad, who had spent his entire life in bustling cities of glass and steel, felt a strange sense of displacement. He realized he had never truly known Anna. This woman, so resilient, strong, and full of life, had come from a place like this. On the narrow streets, people bustled past in thick winter coats. The air was freezing, biting at his skin until he began to shiver, hands curling instinctively into fists. Then he saw her. Anna stood in front of a small grocery store, a faint smile lighting her face. Beside her was a tall young man, carrying her bags with easy enthusiasm. Chad's breath caught. Nearby, an older woman whispered loudly to her friend. "Oh, you like Anna too, huh? I heard her husband died. Her mom's already introducing her to new people." "Died?" Chad turned sharply. "Her husband died?" The woman nodded matter-of-factly. "Yeah, dead and gone." A dull throb pulsed in his temple. She'd ended her pregnancy, left him behind. Just to come here, to this frozen little village, and start dating someone else? And they were saying he was dead. For the first time, Chad felt something he had never felt before, utter defeat. Anna was erasing him from her life, bit by bit, as if he had never existed. He looked at her again. Anna was laughing at something the young man, Jason, had said. That sound, clear and bright like wind chimes, carried through the air and pierced straight into his chest. It had been so long since he'd heard her laugh like that. Alive, effortless, free. Chad swallowed hard. His voice came out rough and low, almost trembling. "Anna." Chapter 12. I froze when I saw Chad. His tailored suit looked completely out of place in this northern town, sharp edges cutting through a world of wool coats and muddy streets. What on earth was he doing here? I had just stepped out to buy soy sauce for my mom and happened to run into Jason, the boy who used to live next door. He'd come back from working out of town, and after so many years, we had plenty to catch up on. I hadn't expected that when I turned around, Chad would be standing there. Our eyes met, his filled with stormy emotion, mine full of confusion. "Is there a problem with the divorce papers?" I asked flatly. Chad's voice was low. "No." "Oh." I nodded once. "Then, are you here sightseeing?" "Have fun. I've got things to do." Chad clenched his jaw, anger flashing across his face. He reached out to grab my wrist, but I stepped back, and Jason immediately moved between us. Didn't you see? Anna doesn't even want to talk to you, Jason said sharply. Chad's tone hardened. You can be mad at me all you want, but we're not divorced yet. Can you stop hanging around with these random men just to piss me off? Jason blinked, then pointed at himself, then at Chad, half laughing, half incredulous. Anna? Who's the random guy here, huh? Where were you when we were childhood friends? I felt a headache coming on. Jason was obviously provoking him, but honestly, if it kept Chad from arguing with me, I wasn't going to stop him. Jason slung an arm around my shoulders. I may be younger than you, and I don't have as much money, for now, but my dad owns a coal business, and for the record, my first love has always been Anna. I tugged lightly at his sleeve, trying to signal him to tone it down. He was overdoing it. Jason really was a rich kid, but not the polished, upper-crust kind like Chad. He had a street-smart charm to him, rough around the edges, but real. A thick gold chain hung around his neck, catching the cold light. What, you think having money makes you special? He shot back. Plenty of people have money. Chapter 13. Chad followed me all the way home, insisting he had nowhere else to go. At that point, he was worse than a stubborn child throwing a tantrum. Jason followed too, walking just close enough to make his presence known. The air between the two men crackled with silent tension. Chad, I said tiredly, we're divorced. He shook his head firmly. Not yet. I rubbed my temples. The divorce papers are already filed, Chad. That means it's happening. If you refuse to sign, I'll see you in court. And you know how rarely I lose a case. Jason snorted beside me. So you get to fool around outside, and you still expect Anna to sit at home waiting for you? Wow, dream on. Then he froze, realizing what he'd said, and waved his hands in panic. Wait, Anna, I didn't mean you're some housewife or anything. You're gorgeous. Even more gorgeous divorced. Chad frowned deeply, voice rising with frustration. I didn't cheat. Anna, it's not what you think, please, just hear me out. We had reached the apartment entrance by then. I sighed, weary beyond words. There's nothing left to explain, Chad. I already know everything. I turned the key in the door. Go back. After we finish the divorce paperwork, there won't be anything left between us. Maybe my tone was too calm, too final, because Chad opened his mouth like he wanted to say more. But before he could, my mom came storming out, broom in hand. She smacked him squarely across the back with one clean swing. Look at you, she barked. Can't you act like a grown man for once? Stop pestering my daughter and get lost already. Chapter 14. The mighty CEO got hit, and now sat there looking pitiful, as if he were the victim. We were already at the door, and though my mom was fuming, she finally sighed and let him in. She didn't even bother pouring him water. Instead, she crossed her arms and spoke before I could. All right then, explain yourself. What's your excuse? I saw that girl's photo online, she added sharply. That's adultery. You cheated during the marriage. Her tone was righteous and fierce, leaving Chad visibly uncomfortable. We never slept together, he blurted out. Good thing my mom hadn't poured him that water, because now she looked ready to throw the whole cup at his face. Shameless, she snapped. Chad opened his mouth, clearly trying to defend himself. I let out a long sigh. I already know everything, Chad. And no, I didn't just believe whatever Tiffany said. I was a lawyer, after all. I dealt in facts and evidence. I wasn't about to start a shouting match without reason. There's no deep mystery between us. I just want a divorce. Is that really so hard to accept? But Chad wouldn't leave. He clung to the conversation like a piece of stubborn tape, refusing to peel off no matter how many times I tried to end it. My mom finally slammed her hand on the table. Don't you dare forgive him just because he looks miserable. Feel sorry for him now, and you'll spend the rest of your life in pain. I nodded quickly, over and over. Chapter 15. Chad, having nothing better to do, couldn't just sit there while my mom bustled around the house. Trying to help seemed like the polite thing to do, except my mom didn't exactly appreciate it. All talk and no skill, she muttered. Bet you've never lifted a finger in your own house. And she wasn't wrong. Chad had grown up with a silver spoon in his mouth, even sweeping the floor looked like a complicated operation to him. Don't think I don't know how much Anna put up with when she married you, my mom went on. People whispered behind her back, called her a gold digger, said she wasn't good enough for you. She jabbed a finger in his direction. And now what? You stay here a few days and already look like you're suffering? She had no mercy when it came to giving orders, not even to a CEO. My daughter, she's capable, hardworking, honest. She helped you build your empire. And you? You can't even hold a broom right. Chad flushed, running around trying to look useful, but it was clear he didn't know what he was doing. I couldn't help shaking my head. Mom, that's enough. We're getting divorced, why bother making him work? But my mom wasn't done. Every time she looked at Chad, her temper flared again. I just can't swallow it, she snapped. Why should my daughter, who I raised with so much care, end up being the one who suffers? Chad's neck turned red with embarrassment. I swear, he said earnestly, I'll never let Anna suffer again. My mom nearly exploded. Now that it's too late, you finally come crawling back? Spare me your regrets. She wasn't wrong, and she didn't stop there. If two people can't live in peace, it means they were never right for each other to begin with. If marriage just makes you miserable, what's the point? Her words came rapid fire, giving Chad no chance to speak. Meanwhile, she treated Jason completely differently. When he came over, she'd beam at him and tell him to sit, never once asking him to lift a finger. Now that's a real man from the Northeast, she said cheerfully. Anna just had no eye for people. I was speechless. Chad, clearly desperate to prove he could be useful, tried even harder, fixing things, cleaning, cooking, but my mom wouldn't even accept his efforts. He'd been at our house for a whole week now, and had been scolded every single day of it. Sterling Group was still running, full of problems waiting for him to handle. Even his mother had called, politely asking me to come back, and when I refused, she asked me to at least convince Chad to return. But I was done. I didn't want to be tangled up with him anymore. Chapter 16. I decided it was time to talk to Chad. He looked exhausted, his pride already trampled flat, his tone hovering between pleading and frustration. Anna, he said quietly, even back then with Tiffany. I never went this far for her. Can't you just give me another chance? But I didn't waver. Does this marriage really have to end? He pressed. If there's something you don't like about me, I can change. Please. Once, I had loved Chad so fiercely it burned. And even now, standing at the end of everything, I didn't regret loving him. Chad, I said softly, I've always known the truth. I know when Tiffany called you away. I know when you didn't come home. I know every time you went to handle something for her. I didn't want to see it, the two of you together. So I pretended not to know. But your lies were clumsy. Every time you said it was work, I knew it was her. I'd lost count of how many times it had happened. Emotional betrayal, wasn't that still betrayal? I hurled the glass in my hand to the floor. It shattered, pieces scattering across the tiles like the sound of something finally breaking. I've been disappointed too many times, I said. No matter how hard I tried, you always went back to Tiffany. Even if I picked up every piece of this glass, it would still be covered in cracks. Chad's voice trembled. It was my fault. I've cut things off with Tiffany. Completely. If you don't want to see her, I can send her abroad. I shook my head. From start to finish, except for provoking me, Tiffany didn't really do anything wrong. She's already been branded the other woman, she's paying her price. The one who's truly at fault is you, Chad. It was you who blurred the lines, you who tipped the scale, you who held the knife that cut me open. Maybe all powerful men are like this, they never think they're wrong. I frowned and began to lay it all out clearly. The day I went to the hospital, I wasn't feeling well. The baby was in danger. And you were on your way to comfort Tiffany. In that moment, I realized something. This child, his own father, never even wanted him. I looked straight into Chad's eyes, my voice calm but distant. Chad, don't you think it's a little hollow to say you love me now? Maybe you don't love me at all. Maybe you're just not used to me being gone. Like losing a business partner you've worked with for years. But I've already handed over my work. Sooner or later, someone will take my place. Outside, snow was falling, soft, endless, blurring the sharpness in his gaze. No, Chad rasped, his voice cracking. That's not true. I sighed. All these years, and you still never fell in love with me. Maybe that just means you never will. Chad, I said gently, let's set each other free. When this snow stops, let's finalize the divorce, and walk our separate ways. Here, on this cold northern soil, eating my mother's cooking, I suddenly felt something swelling inside me again, courage. The heart that had once been hollow now felt full, as if someone had finally breathed life back into it. I used to worry I wasn't good enough for Chad, or that he didn't love me enough. But it had been so long since I last put my own feelings first. If he doesn't love me, that's his loss. He made his choice. And now, I'm making mine. Chapter 17. Chad was in pain. Every day that ticked closer to the divorce felt like another knife twisting into his chest, slow, steady, bleeding him dry. The infatuation he once mistook for love had long faded, replaced by something deeper he hadn't recognized until it was too late. Anna was wrong, he thought. He did love her. He loved her strength, her stubbornness. He had fallen for her the moment she reached down to pull him out of the dark, but he hadn't known it then. He didn't want to let her go. But before he could say anything more, Anna's mother called him in for a talk. She didn't scold him this time. She simply started listing, one by one, all the things her daughter had lost because of him. When my girl married you, she weighed about 100 pounds, she began. Now. Barely 80. She used to love eating meat. Couldn't go a day without it. Now she can't even finish a few bites. Before college exams, she used to sleep like a baby. Now. She's up half the night. Even sleeping pills don't help. Your company, came back to life because of her. But what did she get out of it? I only know that the happy daughter I raised is gone. Each word landed heavy on Chad's chest, crushing the air out of him. She could have succeeded on her own, Anna's mother went on, voice trembling between anger and sorrow. But she gave it all up to help you. She sacrificed everything. And those suffocating dresses she wears? She's always hated them. He had thought it was her choice, that she enjoyed the luxury, the status, the comfort. He had even believed, foolishly, that being the CEO's wife was her greatest victory. That she had climbed the social ladder, surpassed everyone, and reached a place no one else could. He hadn't realized she never wanted any of it. He hadn't seen how much she'd changed. How she'd dimmed herself to fit his world. In this marriage, he hadn't just failed, he had sinned. Anna's mother didn't speak out of malice. She spoke out of love. With quiet pride, she brought out Anna's old awards and certificates, laying them before him. My daughter, she said softly, has always been the kind of person who gets what she wants. She's achieved everything she's ever worked for, everything except you. She's stubborn, too. Never backs down, even when it hurts her. You've already got someone else you care about, don't you? Then let Anna go. She's already broken. Do you really want to hurt her more? When she was little, a scraped knee was enough to make me ache for days. And now. Look what you've done to her. Her voice cracked. Just let her go. It was the first time anyone had spoken to Chad like that, with weight, with sorrow, with truth. And for the first time, he understood what Anna had wanted all along. Not his wealth. Not his name. Just his heart. And because of his pride, his blindness, he had lost her forever. Chapter 18. Chad and I went together to finalize the divorce. When we walked out of the office, my mom was already waiting at the door. She opened her arms wide and pulled me into a hug. Just like she had at every turning point in my life. When I finished my college entrance exams, she had been waiting outside the gates, arms open. When I graduated, she stood at the edge of the ceremony, waiting to hug me again. Her arms were strong, warm, and sure, wrapping around me now as if to hand me all the courage I'd need for whatever came next. This is a great day. Jason cheered from beside her, holding a bouquet of flowers almost too big for him. Anna, congratulations on starting your new life. I couldn't help but laugh. Maybe, in this entire messy story, the one who looked the most defeated now was Chad. But what was done, there was no going back. Goodbye, Chad, I said. He stood there for a moment, his face pale, his voice low. Anna, life's still long. Do I have any chance at all to win you back someday? I gave him a polite smile, the kind you give to someone who's already part of your past. I remember you once said, I told him quietly, you never spend time on things that bring no return. Chasing me again, I added, would be one of those things. Chapter 19. After the divorce, I went back to my mother's home in a quiet town far up north and stayed for 3 months. Those 3 months were like stepping out of the noise of the world. Sometimes, I still thought of Chad. Maybe after all those years of marriage, he had already drained everything out of me until all that was left was a body running on empty. But then I'd hear my mom bustling and talking loudly in the kitchen, the smell of fresh food filling the air, and I'd be pulled back to the present. At home, there was always a warm meal waiting for me. And slowly, I felt myself coming back to life. I began to forget the pain that marriage had left behind. So when a friend reached out with an invitation to start our own law firm, I didn't hesitate. I said yes. That night, after dinner, I hugged my mom tightly. Mom, I said, I'm going back to the city. Her embrace was warm and strong. When the heart's healed, she said softly, you have to set out again. This town is too small to hold you, but your mom's used to letting you go. A lump formed in my throat, and my eyes stung. My mom gently patted my back, as if brushing away all the fear and uncertainty I hadn't even voiced. Whatever you choose, I'll support you, she said. I'll always be your strongest backing. But remember, she added, don't give up on life or love. Be brave enough to try again. Even if you get hurt, I'll be right here, waiting for you to come home. As long as my mom was here, no hardship could truly break me. So I left again. My friend and I founded our own law firm, and soon, our first clients came with congratulations. Even Chad's old business partners, and their wives, sent me flowers. My friend laughed in amazement. Look at this turnout. What new firm gets half the city's elite showing up on opening day? You've got connections, Anna. For the first time, I smiled and thought, maybe I really was good at what I did. All those years of effort and integrity hadn't gone unnoticed after all. Business grew fast. And then one day, I heard the news that Tiffany was getting married. She was marrying a wealthy businessman nearly 50 years old. His first wife had passed away, and his children were about the same age as Tiffany herself. That's when I learned that Whitmore Holdings had fallen on hard times. Tiffany had come back hoping to cling to Chad, but things hadn't gone her way. In the end, she had to accept her family's arrangement and marry for security. When I saw her again at a business dinner, she looked tired, her once bright eyes clouded with weariness. She came up to me and whispered, I'm sorry. I shook my head. She wasn't the reason my marriage ended, she had only been the spark that lit the fire. The truth was, I divorced because of Chad's choices. Chad not loving me has nothing to do with you, I said gently. If you ever need help. I handed her my business card. I'd heard the rumors that the businessman's children were powerful and hostile, and even though Tiffany was now pregnant, it wouldn't be easy for her to secure her place. She gave me a faint smile. "You're so calm, so rational. No wonder you let him go. He was so childish back then." I didn't want to talk about Chad. Not his faults, not our past. So I smiled politely and waved it off. "If there's work, we can talk. Otherwise, let's leave it at that." Yes, Chad had been childish. And I had been stubborn. There wasn't a clear right or wrong between us. He simply didn't love me enough. And I was too tired to keep trying. So we ended things. I had lost more than he did. I had lost a child. For a long time, I'd struggled with the decision of whether to keep the baby. But in the end, I couldn't. I didn't want her to become a chain binding me to the past. And I didn't want her to grow up one day and learn what her father and I had done to each other. Chapter 20. No one knew why, but each year, Chad's company performed worse than the last. He was still the president, but when I saw him again, his eyes were bloodshot. "Anna," he said hoarsely, "I haven't been doing well since you left." Was losing a free worker really that painful? I thought for a moment. But since I left you, I've been doing just fine. That was my refusal, plain and final. Once again, I turned him down. Chad stood there silently for a long time. At least, he didn't try to make a scene in public. But he never stopped chasing me. He kept sending flowers. When I refused to take them, he sent them to the office instead. Even the receptionist joked. "Our firm's going to drown in flowers at this rate." But I didn't want the flowers. And I didn't want that title anymore. That role had been exhausting, thankless, invisible, and lonely. In contrast, my new life was thriving. I'd poured myself into my career, and the results spoke for themselves. I'd outgrown the age where a bouquet could move me. What I wanted now was success. Not the kind of a love that left me suffocating. One afternoon, Jason pulled up in a sleek sports car outside my firm. He opened the door with a grin and called out, "Quit wasting your time on useless guys, Anna. Choose me instead. I won't make you lift a finger, you'll be the boss of everything at home."